So we're trying to do something different here, and you guys can kind of hear some stuff in the background. This is not in studio, sorry, you guys know that. We're trying to do a live webcast for all the different cities that we present at for local attendees. Now, for the SANS people that are here in the room, you're probably wondering, why is it here and not over across the street at the hotel? Why did I make you go outside into the sunlight? and part of it's good for you. It's exercise. The other reason why we set it up like this is because beer at the hotel is $10 a bottle. It is. It's ridiculously expensive. So we're trying to find places that are off-site, and it's also a good way to get people out of the conference and come and do something someplace else. And we can buy food for dirt cheap. It's basically for the cost of all the food and the beer that we have here, which is much better food than the hotel. We could have bought like maybe 10 beers for everybody, and that's not a good way to play it. So this presentation is cyber deception on the cheap, and I put this together because there's a lot of talk about cyber deception, active defense, offensive countermeasures, and hacking back in the industry today, and that's cool. But it's a bit weird. Okay, so Paul Zadorian and I really started pushing this about 6-7 years ago. We first started presenting at RSA. We released a book on the topic. We released a tool, the Active Defense Harbinger Distribution. We set up all these different things, and it was great, and it was fine, and people started talking about active defense, but then things started veering horribly out of control. It's kind of like, if you have a child and all of a sudden the child starts running around starting fires, you're just like, Logan, cut this out, and you feel like you failed as a parent. In a lot of ways, I feel that way, and the reason why I feel that way is almost everybody that's looking at cyber deception, offensive countermeasures, and active defense is looking at it from the perspective of hacking back and saying it's wrong under all conditions, or they're looking at it from the perspective of purely just honeypots. What we're going to do is we're going to create a company, and we're going to sell really advanced honeypot technology. And that's not what Paul and I were talking about. So we're trying to get some ownership back of this particular topic. The other reason is it's gotten very interesting in Congress lately. There's been a series of laws that have been proposed that are talking about cyber deception. I think it's called the ACDC law, which I am absolutely convinced that the congressman that came up with the ACDC acronym was familiar with ADHD. So we're trying to play around with those acronyms a little bit. So what I wanted to do in this presentation is give people something free and actionable that they could set up in their network to set up cyber deception in such a way that you could have something running in under 2 hours in your organization, and it would be effective at actually detecting a lot of attackers and maybe get some level of attribution on the attackers. So we're going to use a lot of components that I've already discussed and have been part of the Active Defense Harbinger Distribution. But let's talk a little bit about some vendors that are out there today. We have a huge, huge explosion of cyber deception vendors. Now, unfortunately, Gartner, whenever they look at cyber deception as a market space, the most important and really depressing thing about Gartner looking at this in the market space is now Gartner is kind of controlling the definition of what things are because they're Gartner. And I don't spend a lot of time worrying about what Gartner thinks about, well, anything at all. But unfortunately, once they get into a space and they define something, that is pretty much the definition that it's stuck with. And predominantly, Gartner is focusing on cyber deception as it relates explicitly to network cyber deception. That would be honeypots. And all of these vendors have really, really complicated honeypot products. So you can set them up in your network, and then you can identify what services and servers you want to deploy on the network. You deploy these honeypot systems, maybe establish breadcrumbs to kind of entice the bad guys to go to these honeypot systems, and then you get to watch what the bad guy does. And this bothers me. This bothers me because this is basically the same thing that we were doing 10, 15 years ago with Lance Spitzer's book, Honeypots. And we're just making it prettier with better GUIs. And underneath it, it's pretty much Open Canary scripts that are running, or modified Open Canary scripts, and they're trying to emulate services. But there's better stuff. I mean, really, there's nobody that's talking that much about attribution technologies. And if you guys want me to, I can talk about some free attribution technologies a little bit later. I may have my son pull out the wireless card in my black bag, and I'll show you Honey Badger and some of the things there. But this is frustrating because whenever it gets pigeonholed into a specific area, then that is the definition that everyone plays with, and we need to get away from that. That's not saying anything bad about any of these vendors out there. They're at least more innovative than the existing security technologies that everyone expects to see, like IDS, IPS, AV, and so on. So let's jump in. Why are we doing this? Because free, something that is free, will help prime the pump. We're trying to get organizations to be comfortable with the idea of cyber deception. And right now, a tremendous amount of these vendors are actually working contrary to making cyber deception an accepted, open idea of information security technologies. Why? Well, a lot of the vendors have these products, and they charge hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they are ridiculously expensive to get them into a network. And if you're trying to get a CIO to buy off on an idea that is not part of compliance, it is not a requirement, if they can actually see some proof in the pudding about what's going on, then they really don't feel comfortable shelling out money to make a commitment to doing cyber deception. Symmetria is one of the exceptions in this area, and so is Canary. Canary has open Canary scripts. And then the other company out there is Symmetria, Gadi Evron's company from Israel. A couple of the companies that I listed were from Israel. They actually have a free version of their product called Maze Runner, and I think it runs 4 different honeypots for you. It costs you nothing. It is very, very cheap. Well, it's free. Hey, man, good to see you. It is super duper easy to set up, and I like that because with free tools, it gets people at least comfortable with the idea of what's going on rather than committing to $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 for a maybe technology. Also, to get ideas flowing. I honestly feel like cyber deception and active defense has stalled. And the reason why it stalled is everyone got stuck on the idea of honeypots. Whenever we talked about honeypots, they got stalled on just honeypots. They got stalled on trying to define it as hacking back, and people aren't getting past that anymore. Years ago, we got a request from one of the editors and writers of Wired magazine. They said, we want to talk to you about hacking back and cyber deception. And we got on the phone with her, and she said, well, are you guys actively hacking bad guys? We're like, well, no, that's illegal. We can create poison for the bad guys to try to track the bad guys. And she said, we're not interested. That's not sexy. We want people that are actively hacking bad guys' computer systems. And that just drove that conversation more into that space. So we want to keep the ideas moving. We don't want to get stuck on one particular type of technology. Also, we need a fundamental change in security, and it's starting slowly, but it is starting. We need to get away from the traditional IDS, IPS, AV type technologies and move into something else. On my other presentations about cyber deception and active defense, I talk about OODA by John Boyd, Observe, Orient, Decide, and Act, and how we can get inside the attacker's OODA loop and we can basically make them start making mistakes so we can see them. We need to keep thinking that way. And we got some progression, but then it kind of froze as well. Next, we need to, what we are currently doing is not working. This is extremely frustrating to me to see this change happen, but it happened very, very slowly. Very few organizations are actually implementing these technologies in a way that actually makes it difficult for us to actually break into their network. Also, this can be done quickly and cheaply. And this drives a lot of these vendors very, very, very much into a tizzy whenever I say, here's your product, that's great, I can do it for free and get 80% of the functionality at no cost. And they're like, well, no, we got patent pending, and look at our GUI. Did you see our GUI? Our GUI is fantastic. It's a fantastic GUI. And they're missing the point. So we need to try to bring some of this stuff to fruition. So the goals, I set some very, very simple goals for myself to make it applicable to an enterprise. So the goal of this was to come up and set up a cyber deception and attribution components, and I wanted it to be something that anybody could do in under half a day. One of the problems I've realized with ADHD and all the stuff I've been discussing with active defense over the years is I've been talking about individual tools. Look at this tool, look at this tool, look at this tool, look at this tool, look at this tool. And I haven't been tying the pieces together for people. And I know that that sounds harsh, but there are a lot of people in security, if they don't actually see how it directly can be applied in their environment, or directly applied in their web server, directly applied in Active Directory, they're just not going to do it. They don't understand the intrinsic value of that tool, and that's okay. It doesn't bother me that they don't see it. It's more my responsibility as a presenter to make these things applicable as well. Quick and dirty. I want to be able to get in, get out. I'm going to do things with Kiwi. I'm going to do things with Sysmon. I'm going to do things with Snare, and you could also do NXLog. There's a bunch of ways to do the exact same things that I did with different tools. So I just found the quickest, dirtiest, fastest tools I could set it up with. But all of the tools that I use, you could find analogous other tools that would work as well. So Odd, it's very, very bizarre to me, but a lot of the quick and dirty things, if I say you can do this in under half an hour, people feel like they can actually do it. They get that Dumbo feather, and they're like, well, I can do this. If I talk about Honey Badger, which is pretty easy to implement, but I say you can integrate it into your existing web infrastructure by actually taking this HTML tag, putting it into your code in the header, people are like, no, that's too hard. So it's quick, dirty, make it fast, people tend to implement it. And I can't wait until I see it on an actual pen test, and I have like Sally cuss me out, and she's like, yeah, they shut me down in under 5 minutes as soon as I started password spraying. That would be awesome, right? So the first thing that I'm going to show you guys, just kind of a quick setup, is an Active Directory Honey admin account. Now, this makes me a little bit uncomfortable. There's more than one way to do this without being an admin, but I'm going to walk through how you can create an account in your environment that if anybody touches, it generates an alert and it notifies you that someone is up to shenanigans in your network. So the first thing you do is you create an administrator level account. Feel free to be painfully obvious with this account. You don't want to pull any punches. So I named my my administrator account admin ADM administrator. So it's like admin is the user ID. Just to make it clear, this is the admin account. And don't worry about bad guys like, well, that's far too obvious for an administrator account, because as testers, we're used to it being obvious. In fact, we expect it to be obvious. And the reason why is it's almost always directly obvious. It's like domain admin. Oh, well, let's go for the domain admin account. And it almost always is. So make it a very obvious account. Now, just yesterday, Javelin Networks released a tool that's designed for penetration testers to detect honeypot activity on a network, which is cool because they're actually a honeypot company. So they looked at all of the other free honeypots that are out there, and they wrote a tool to detect every single one of them. And I think that that's awesome for pen testers. So a little bit of offense is thrown in this as well. I'll try to find that tool and share the link with you guys at the end. One of the things they look for is they look for administrator accounts that have never been logged into. And they basically say avoid these accounts. The problem I have with their tool is it requires you to actually be running as a domain administrator to query that type of information. We're assuming in this situation that a bad guy gets initial access as a standard domain user in the environment, and they're going to use this as a way to try to elevate privileges. That makes sense to everyone? Cool. So the first thing is we create the account, we make it obvious. Here's the really important thing. Do not screw this up. You have to set the logon hours to nothing. So that means that no one can ever log on to the system under any circumstances. If you really want to screw with an attacker, you could actually make the login hours a smiley face. But don't do that, right? Don't do that. Right? What was it? Were you on the test where you got access to one of the domain admin accounts? It was far too easy, and you were worried that it was a honeypot account? And that's kind of what spawned this. It was a honeypot account. Unfortunately, they made it so you could log into the honeypot account. Don't do that, right? It's like, we got you. You found our honeypot account. It was a domain administrator. That's not a honeypot. That's a vulnerability, okay? That's a critical in our report. So set the logon hours to nothing. So they can't log on at all whatsoever in the environment. I also am really uncomfortable with it being a domain administrator, just letting you guys know. I don't know if it's necessary for it to be a domain administrator. I mean, they're going to go for it. That's fine. But I just feel uncomfortable, even if the logon hours are set to blank, having this administrator account floating out there. I could just see a domain admin that comes in and is like, hey, what's the ADM administrator account? Another admin's like, dude, I don't know. Why is it set to no logon hours? That can't be right. Let's fix it. So that's what we're trying to avoid here. Yes, we're going to talk about the audit logs here in just a second. So one of the problems I have with Microsoft is their event logs are insane. The way that they do event logging just makes your head explode. The exact same event ID can be used for like 90 different things. It's basically kind of a subcategory within that specific event ID. So I wanted something that would forward the event logs off of the Windows system and do it very simply, because once again, I'm trying to make this super duper easy for people. So I use Snare. Snare was actually the easiest tool to configure, pull off the event logs, and send to a syslog server for alerting. You could do anything. You could be working with ArcSight. You could be working with Splunk. I do not care. You could run NXlog, not a problem. I'm not saying that one tool is better or worse than another. I'm just saying, hey, if you're trying to get this done in under 20 minutes, this is the tool to use because it is the easiest to set up. You install the Snare agent, give it a password. You then surf to the web server from the local computer system, and then you put in the IP address of the syslog server, the port that the syslog server is listening on. You apply the changes, and just like that, Snare starts forwarding event logs. The other thing that's really nice about Snare is it's a little bit intelligent about which event logs it forwards on. It has some configuration. You can also do the same thing with NXlog. You can configure and say, these are the event log categories that I am interested in, only forward them. So service creation, service deletion, you have a new user being created, passwords being changed, account login, account log off. You can basically specify a subcategory, and it'll just forward on those event logs, which is great. Now, we do have some people from time to time that like to say, well, we should log everything. Because what if we miss something? Don't do that, okay? Don't do that. I would say, yeah, don't do what the government does. We should log everything at all times. That's horrible. But my sim vendor, I love that. The sim vendor says I should log absolutely everything because how is their paycheck determined? By how many terabytes you're logging. Log it all, let ArcSight sort it out. I loved it. CJ, when we were at Northrop Grumman, we were on an engagement, and we were trying to get this product approved for one of the projects we were working on. And in the meantime, we didn't have an event logging solution, but the logs needed to be reviewed. And CJ was the ISO for this project, the Information System Security Officer. And they said, well, we've got a solution to this. Every day we'll have CJ review the event logs by hand. So every day, it was like in the morning, he would sit there and just scroll through the event logs, right? And he's just kind of going down, and they're flying by the screen. And we're just like, why are you doing this? Well, if I don't do this, it's a category 1 finding until we can get a tool approved that does all this stuff automatically for us. So they were literally making sure that CJ was doing this, and you had to like record in an audit log that you reviewed the event logs every day. That's reviewing, right? You touched them. Is there a file? They're like, yep. So he touched them, so that qualifies as auditing those files. So then they finally got this approved, and that was kind of neat. And there's other tools that you can use. And you can see I was literally working on these slides while Enterprise Security Weekly was going on. This is Paul interviewing a guest while I'm creating these screenshots for this presentation. And I realized when I'm putting it together, I'm like, oh, crap. I put Paul in the middle of my presentation. Yeah, screw it. Let's just go. Yeah, he does. He's always there. So, all right. So the next thing is I wanted to have something on the other side that was easy for people to set up, configure, that would catch the event logs. You can get all kinds of different syslog daemons for Linux computer systems, but I went with Kiwi because if people are getting started with this stuff and they're relatively uncomfortable with Linux, Kiwi is just you double-click it, you install it as a service, and now you've got a syslog server. The other thing that's neat about Kiwi is you can put in filter rules. Whenever it detects a string, it'll actually trigger an action. And you have, it's not here, but they have a series of screens like 0001, 02, 03, 04, where you can have events triggered, and then it throws it to a separate screen so that you can have a subset of the event logs that you're looking at. You can also have it send you an email. You can have it send you a page. You can also forward it on to another syslog server. You can also have it trigger a script, and I'll talk about that script in a little bit. But this is kind of similar to what you can do with ArcSight. You can do this with Splunk. You can do this with Elk if you want to do it. With Logstash and Elasticsearch. There's literally hundreds of ways that you can achieve this exact same thing. I'm just showing you one way that you can do this. And I use the free version of Kiwi because, you know, who has time for this? So we have it set up, and it's configured. Now, on the system that was attached to the domain that we have at Black Hills Information Security, I ran Bo's domain password script, or domain password spray script. The reason why I ran this script is one of the first things we do after we get access to a account on a system, whether it's phishing or getting access to a remote desktop or Outlook web access, setting up malicious Outlook rule that gets malware on somebody's computer system. We are not going to be a domain administrator right away. we're going to be a standard user. And one of the first things we do is we take our standard user account, we use domain password spray, which dumps all of the users for the domain, and then it tries a single password for each one of the accounts on the domain. Now, we have set this account so it can't be logged into, but someone can try. And when someone tries to log into this particular account, it's going to trigger an event log. That event log is going to go to Snare. Snare is going to forward to Kiwi. Kiwi generates an alert and tells you that this particular match happened. Somebody tried to log on to this computer system with this account. It's going to be unsuccessful, but you're going to see that attempt. Okay? So we fire this up. It dumps all of the users, including our admin account. And it tries to authenticate to every single one of them with the password of spring 2017. And it didn't get our account. And that's okay. That's not the point. The point isn't to allow the attacker to log into the account. Once again, talking about some of our customers, you shouldn't create a honeypot account that's a domain administrator that the bad guys can log into. That's bad, okay? It's basically like saying, hey, we're going to test my house with a smoke detector, and we're going to put napalm right below it. And if anybody napalms our house, ha, we caught you, and the house is burning down. That's bad. Don't do that. But by running this authentication attempt, it's going to generate an alert in our event log. And in this situation, Snare forwarded it on to Kiwi. Kiwi had a filter, and as soon as it said failure audit, they didn't log on successfully. But now I know for sure this is up to shenanigans on my environment trying to access. Now, commercial products that do this. Lots of commercial products that do similar things to this. They'll also do it with tokens. They'll put tokens in the memory of every single one of your computer systems. So if anybody tries to run Mimikatz, it'll actually trigger and catch that. But this costs nothing. This takes a few moments to set up, and almost every single attacker post-exploitation will launch this trick. If a bad guy is on a computer system, is there anything about this that would be suspicious to the bad guy? The answer is no. This is actually something that you would run as far as a filter on your domain controller. You would run it on your existing SIM. You would have it set up in your environment with your existing infrastructure. The only thing you need to do is create the domain administrator account, set the login hours to 0, and then set the rules for alerting. The only thing the bad guy is going to see is the bait. They're going to see the admin account. As soon as they touch that bait, it generates the alert, and you've got them. And the cool thing is with Kiwi, I talked about the scripts. You can generate a script that as soon as somebody touches that account, it can automatically lock their workstation out so they can't log in anymore, and whatever user account is logged in. That's a little bit more work, but yeah, you can absolutely do it. So first step, this is something that you could do very, very easily. So as I said, is this frightening? Does this look like this is something that's going to take your team a year and a half to implement? No. And it's going to detect the vast majority of post-exploitation first steps. I honestly feel that a lot of the technologies that are out there that are commercial technologies are going too far and trying to do too much in a series of steps. And this is easy, and it's going to work. Any other questions? So Sally just pointed out in a pen test, we avoid the disabled accounts because it's a waste of our time, right? But the fact that this is set to no login hours, it's an active account. You just can't actually log on to it, ever. So I've always wondered, like, I've always had this fear, and this is weird with this. If you set the logon hours to 0, what happens on a leap year and you get that extra day? Does it switch it all on for that one day out of the year? I don't. It probably doesn't, but I get paranoid about some of these things. Yeah, during the leap second. So here's the deal. A lot of the security products out there that detect this type of scanning behavior, whenever we're doing a domain password spray, they'll detect it. And I have a problem with that. It's good, don't get me wrong, it's good, but there's a problem. The problem is a lot of the security products that are coming out now for user behavioral analytics, they're good at detecting penetration testers. So whenever we get into an environment, we move fast. Why would we move very quickly and run these scripts that basically try a password with every single account quickly? Absolutely. We're trying to replicate what an attacker would do in a month time frame. So one of the reasons why you'd want to set it as a domain admin account is an attacker may move at a much slower pace than our password spray script nailing everything in a matter of like 5 minutes. So what they'll do is the attackers will be very choosy as far as which accounts they're going after. And by and large, they're going to try to hit those domain administrator accounts first and do so very slowly. as my kids would point out, Despacito. And then we start singing the Justin Bieber song, because this is the way we do it down in Puerto Rico with Carlos Perez. All right. All right. Any other questions? Very, very cool. So everyone's got this down. This one's really, really easy. The next one, I got to say, I've seen presentations where people talk about this, and I'm always kind of a little bit like, yeah, it's kind of easy. It's not that cool. Like, it's not technically neat, but it works. Trust me. The next one is probably more in my swim lane. This is where I get super duper excited, because we're going to mix a little bit of cyber deception, and we're going to mix in a little bit of attribution as well. So one of the things I fundamentally believe is missing from almost all the security products that are out there in the space is the ability to get some level of attribution against the attacker. Where are they at some level? So to get this particular scenario set up, you have to install Active Defense Harbinger Distribution in the cloud, okay? Very easy to do. You go to DigitalOcean, you get an Ubuntu 16.04 system, you then run this script right here as root. You can totally trust it. And it'll automatically download and install all of the different ADHD tools for you. Yes?
He just pointed to the commands. It wasn't, it's fine.
So it's this curl script right here. You can see with my mouse. You just simply run that, and it's going to install all of the ADHD components on your system for you, which is really neat. So that's easy, and I'm going to show you a little bit about ADHD here in just a little bit. The other thing is all of the instructions for ADHD are also out on GitHub, and you can pull those down. And whenever you download them or do a git clone, this is what it looks like. Right here. And I know that some of you guys have seen this before, and I'm retreading the same thing, but I once again want to drive home the idea that this active defense stuff that we're talking about is not hard, okay? It's not difficult at all. So let me go to full screen, enhance. All right. And whenever you clone the ADHD docs, it actually creates this document file for you. Start over from scratch. Here we go. The usage doc file, and every single one of the tools in ADHD is listed out, and all of the instructions are also in ADHD. So what we're doing is Webbug Server. That's the one that we're doing here. And we actually have videos for all of the tools as well. That'll actually do a tutorial with step-by-step walkthroughs. We also have step-by-step commands on how to use the tool, just because, look, this is kind of a shot against Kali, and I know, I'm just, some random security dude, but one of the things I hate about Kali is, do you ever get the feeling that there's about 100,000 tools in Kali, and you only know how to use like 2 of them? And if you try to look at the man pages for the tools, you're just like, who wrote this garbage? And then somewhere down the line, you're seeing a presentation and someone runs that tool and does something amazing with it, and you're like, I didn't even know. Yeah, mind blown, right? And I really wish that someone would get together and do a Kali project where they go through and they create instructional videos for each one of the tools to show how it's done and step-by-step instructions. So that's what we've done with the Active Defense Harbinger Distribution, to make it as user accessible as possible. All right, so you're going to get the install and the instruction docs to show you how to create a Word web bug. Then you're going to create that Word web bug. So I went through the instructions that you would follow. I CD'd into opt web, and then I went into Webbug Server, and you have a number of files. The one that's the most interesting is webbug.doc. I run gedit and do webbug.doc, and I put the href.168.192.135. You change that to be the IP address of your cloud, your DigitalOcean system. Notice I did not put my IP address in there, because every time I've ever done a presentation and I put an IP address of one of my systems, it's about 2 minutes into it, and it's being attacked constantly. And the last time I did this, I didn't change any of the default passwords of ADHD, and I had a student, or not a student, somebody that was watching the presentation, pop the box, and they thought that was pretty funny. So did I. But okay, that kind of made me mad. That was kind of a jackass move. I'm like, look at how easy it is to install ADHD. Going through the install instructions, showing people how to do it. And he's like, ha, ADHD in, wall, hi. I said, oh, crap. So no more. I'm not going to do that. So you change your IP address here, and then also at the image source tag, you would also change the IP address. Now what's going to happen is this Word document is going to open. It's going to work just fine. It's going to pop up. It's going to say something like, do you want to enable editing in this document? But at that point, it's already fired and it's beaconed back. So it's beaconed back. I thought I saw a hand go up. Yeah. Yeah. It's one of the questions was, why do I use DigitalOcean? Because I love it. So let me clarify that. The reason why I love DigitalOcean is the idea of creating a virtual machine in DigitalOcean and then saving it as a droplet, and then I can just recreate that one again and again and again as needed is awesome. I mean, that's great. And they're starting to develop all kinds of different services that you traditionally see with Amazon. There's no way they're ever going to catch Amazon because you know, Jeff Bezos has all of the money in the world that Google does not have, and they're never going to be able to keep up. But it takes me like 2 minutes to set up a droplet, get it configured, install everything that I need, and more importantly, they don't shut off my droplets whenever I'm hacking with them. All right, so now we move that file over to our Linux server, and I just did a wget and grabbed that file off the server. Now, if you notice, I did a wget, grabbed the file off the server, and I put it in a directory called secret super. All right, so I put it in a directory called secret super. I'm going to create a SMB share on this Linux box that's sharing out that directory, and it's going to allow the bad guy to pull that document down. There are a lot of ways to do this. You can do this with Samba, very easy, and you can integrate Samba with Active Directory. So the Active Directory credentials will get passed in. But I kind of fell in love with Impacket. I don't know if anybody's ever played with Impacket from Core. So it's cool. It's a really nice mix of like evil, bad guy, hackery, cool stuff for like stealing credentials and the ability to create a functional SMB share using Python. So does anybody use Python --m simple HTTP server? So if you install Python, if you do Python --m space simple HTTP server, Python automatically stands up a standalone web server and it works. You can serve up web pages and do all kinds of things with it with one command. Impacket is kind of like that. We can run Impacket with the smbserver.py script, and it'll automatically stand up a Python-based SMB server. So that's so cool. I'm sorry, I like it. But yeah, you could totally use Samba. You could even use a real Windows file server and turn on file and object directory auditing on that particular server. I don't care, right? It's not like there's any one way to do this. I'm just saying this is quick, this is dirty. I went through and was going through the instructions of standing up a Samba server, configuring the samba.conf, and I was like, I want something easy. Like I said, I wanted this done, and I wanted this something that could be done, like I said, in about 15, 20 minutes. Impacket, you download it, you simply run it, smbserver.py, comment, secret super, secret, and then you give it the directory that you want to share out. You now have a full SMB server that's completely configured and sharing out a file. No muss, no fuss, no weird configuration files. The other thing that I kind of liked about this is it's not attached to Active Directory in any way. So you can actually map the shares from all of your different workstations and just let it sit there. Now you're going to have users that get curious and go to that share. That's going to happen from time to time, right? It absolutely is. But you could give it a really boring name like help desk will visit you. And people are like, well, I don't want those guys to ever visit me. Just stay away. But you got the share, and then you can access the share. And then you have your web bug document there. Now, if the bad guy gains access to a system, one of the things that they may run is PowerShell Empire's share finder. And what you want to do is make sure that this is a share that shows up with share finder. You want to give it a name that is going to attract attention. Now, I did secret super. You could have done totally illegal documents. I don't know. You know, credit cards, passwords, systems administrated password share. Oh, we better go to that. You want to entice them to come to that share as quickly as possible. And once they get there, I've got my Word document called Webbug. You could name it whatever you wanted. You could call it passwords.doc, right? So when the bad guy runs the document and opens up, it says, what a buggy document. And it beacons back. And when it beacons back, it logs into, it creates a log entry into our database server, and it says, here's the IP address that made the connection, and there's the time when the connection was made to the system with the cascading style sheet and the image source tag. Now, this is just an IP address. I totally understand that. Geolocation based on IP address is coarse at best. But I got a question about attribution. If you find out the attackers are in Shanghai, or they're in Kansas, does that provide some value from threat intelligence? It does. You got something. You at least know what city they're coming from. See, that's beautiful. If they're using Tor, Microsoft Word is usually not configured to go through Tor. So that's neat. If you actually go the route of using a macro in Excel spreadsheet, it doesn't matter if they're going to Tor, because it's doing a wireless site survey and identifying their geolocation based on wireless access points that are nearby and feeding you that information. So there's a whole bunch of different ways that you can pull this off, and that's one of the things that bothers me is I don't see a lot of people doing cyber attribution. So we have all of these conversations. Is it the Russians? Is it the Chinese? Is it the North Koreans? Wouldn't it be nice to at least get an IP address from them? Also, if they are in the United States, you can actually get a warrant and work with local law enforcement. And if you have the date, timestamp, and the IP address and the source port, you can actually find exactly where they're coming from. And that works pretty well. Another neat trick, if you guys want to know, if you have an IP address, a lot of times that IP address, if it's like a home system, will resolve back to Denver. It's like, well, it's all of Denver. But if you trace route to that IP address, go to the last routing hop and do geolocation on that hop, usually the geolocation for different routers and DSL pops and cable modem pops is a lot more accurate, and you can actually get within the neighborhood and sometimes the block where the bad guy is. So just a couple of quick, fun things to deal with. So that's opening the file. And then this is why I love Impacket, because I'm a red teamer at heart. Impacket just doesn't serve up an SMB server. Impacket also steals their password hash. So with Impacket, it says, got an incoming connection from 192.168.192.1 from this port. The username is the desktop. Here's the user ID, authenticated, and here's the challenge, 41414141, and here's their password hash. That's just cool, right? So now it's one of those things, I now know exactly which account in Active Directory is most likely compromised. Yeah, I haven't got their password hash. I don't know what the usefulness is that to a blue teamer. I just think it's cool. So you can set this up a number of different ways. Let me show you some other things that you can do. I show this in a number of other presentations, but how many of you guys have seen Honey Badger, a geolocation based on Wi-Fi? Okay. Hey, Logan, in my bag is that black bag. In my green bag is the little black bag. Could you bring that up to me? Yeah, I can't get away from it. So let's see what we can do here. So I'll show you some previous data. So you can do Word documents, but you know what? You can also, why don't you set up some websites that are honeypot websites, right? Could we do that? What would be some interesting websites that attackers would go after? WP admin, yes. Pre4, so I was talking about that in relation to, hey, Sierra, I know I asked Logan, did you pick up that little wireless card that's like this big that was on the table? Let's do this. Does anybody have a USB wireless card that I can borrow in their pocket? Yes, he's going to beat you. Yeah. As everybody, for those of you, oh, I got one. Never mind, never mind. And why does this have a rubber ducky sticker on it? All right. So one of the things that you can do, and I know for a lot of you that's seen me present on this, and I'm going to talk about this tomorrow night in a hunting we will go. I'll actually demonstrate this, so this will be fun. The first thing I need to make sure of is that I actually have internet connectivity for my virtual machine. Okay, internet connectivity confirmed. And you can also create web servers that a bad guy is going to be interested in going in. And like I said, I know that a lot of you guys have seen this before, but some of the people in the room haven't. And I want to share this. And this is easy to install and set up. So this is Honey Badger. And here's some previous captures that I've done over the past few months. I did one at B-Sides Cleveland, and apparently I did one at San Diego. I don't remember doing anything in San Diego, but whatever. So there was drinking involved, I'm sure. That's where my power cord goes. It's the wrong hole. That's upside down. There we go. So I'm going to plug in the USB wireless card. And I'm going to make sure that it, as a removable device, is mapped to my Linux computer, which it is. And then I'm going to do iwconfig. And you can see my wireless card is present. Excellent. So now I'm going to trigger it. So we have a simple little demo web page. And I hope this works. I don't know. It's just, you know, demos. And I can say, nah, I'm not going to share my location. Not now. And here in a couple seconds, you're going to see a Java pop up. Something to gather their attention as well. So the first thing that you should know is this is a Java app, right? It is signed by a verified code certificate, which is a code certificate company that we created in Idaho, Verified Code Certificate, LLC. Notice it said, hey, do you want to trust this code certificate? It is not self-signed, but it was burned out in a pen test. A little bit mad at Ethan for this. Ethan was on a penetration test, and he needed a verified code certificate that was valid, and he decided to use the one in ADHD. He was like, oh, I had it laying around. So he used it. It only costs you about $150 to buy a verified code certificate that is valid, and then Java will run. Now, how will we get a bad guy to run Java, right? Because most of us are as afraid of Java as we are of macros. So how will we convince a bad guy to run Java? You have to tell them it's verified. It's secure. What about if we made it look like VNC, right? So this web page just says this is a demo page for the crazy natty-ass honey badger. But what if we made it like VNC or a SSH server, or not an SSH server, a VPN server, Juniper SSL VPN or something like that? Then they would want to run it, right? So we got to trick the bad guy into running it. Also, how many of you guys actually have Java apps at work that are required at work? Like you guys use Java, right? We have a tool called jar combiner, which will combine Honeybadger into any Java app, backdoor it, and do geolocation of every single user that runs your Java app, legitimate users. And that's great. If they're all in DC, that's awesome, that's awesome, that's awesome, that's awesome. And then all of a sudden it pops up in Albania, you know. Oh, well, I wonder what we're going to focus on here. That might be something that we can look at. So meanwhile, in the background, if you actually set the stuff up, if I take this page and I refresh it, I now have a pin here in Washington, D.C. People on the webcast are like, now we know who you are. Please come down and check our beer. So it put the pin right outside of our front door. So whenever I say that we can go further, I really mean we can go further, folks. And it's funny, whenever I demonstrate this to DoD folks, sometimes they look at it and are like, that's close enough. So some of you will hear that joke twice this week. So we can go further. You can embed this inside of an Excel spreadsheet. You can do it in a number of different ways. Now, getting to the Tor question, how does this deal with Tor? Well, I don't care. They can come through Tor. It doesn't really matter to me. If I take a look at the log, I'll show you what it's actually doing. What it does is it does a wireless site survey of all the wireless access points that are nearby, okay, completely independent of Tor. And then it takes that wireless site survey data, and it base64 encodes it, and it sends it to me. So even if they're using Tor, I'm still going to get that data. Then it takes all of that base64 encoded data, decodes it, and it says these are the wireless access points that are nearby. Signal level, LTDC, cell2, and it sends it to Google. So what I can do is take this entire thing, copy it. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Copy it. This presentation sucks. He doesn't even know how to copy and paste properly. All right, and I'm going to put that in the URL. And I'm going to delete the front EBIT for the API URL. And I can just put that entire URL into my browser. It goes to Google, and Google comes back and says accuracy is 42 meters, latitude and longitude is this, right? So we can take these ideas of like files and shares and admin accounts, and for no cost at all, we can implement them in our environment. Now, is that accurate attribution? That's what we've been looking for, right? That's what we're ultimately after when we're talking about the attribution game. The other thing that's beautiful is we haven't violated any laws. I talked about Susan Clements Jeffrey versus Absolute Software. If you guys want me to talk about that more, come to my talk tomorrow night. But basically, the judge said geolocation information, IP address, is legal. We should be able to do that. We're not violating anyone's privacy. And if you ever get in front of a judge, and the judge is like, what makes you think it's okay to do this? It's like, Your Honor, do you have a phone? It's doing it at least 100 times a second for all of the apps that you're running. It's constantly doing geolocation all the time. So if this is illegal, there ain't nothing that is, Your Honor. So kind of setting this stuff up is fun, and this doesn't take very long. And I'm going to start doing more presentations, I think, that's not just, hey, here's a tool. I'm going to say, here's how you embed this tool and make it work within your own organization. So I'm going to open it up to questions. We got online people. We got people here. We actually got a pretty good room full, you know, with kind of being last minute. For those of you that are not in attendance, we went and got a bunch of hobos off the street. And one of those comedy specials. We're like, you know, hummus. So they're like, oh, hummus. All right. Oh, you'd be surprised how many hobos we can get. I was like, I'm not a hobo. All right, so questions. What do we have? You guys just want to drink our beer and eat our food, right? Understood. All right. What kind of beer? We have all kinds. We have Miller Lite. Oh, yum. And Heineken. Skunk Pea.
John, I have a question.
Oh, yes, something valid.
So Guy says, I'm doing a course on doing security for cheap for the BC government. Is it okay if he uses some of the content from this?
Yes, absolutely.
There you go.
Anything I present is free all the time. All of our tools are free all the time.
Jordan says, can we burn those lab accounts yet?
Not yet. Tell Jordan and Kent to wait until I do my next presentation.
Okay.
Because I actually want to demonstrate the setup. Jordan's all itchy. Honestly, I think what's going on is a couple of things. One, it's new. And humans are naturally adverse to anything that is new, right? It's not part of the existing security support structure that we've been running with forever. And if you look at the risk reward for a lot of human beings, there isn't a hell of a lot of risk being unique and different. If you don't believe me, sit and talk to a bunch of CEOs in the military, or not CEOs, military generals, and talk to CEOs in two separate conversations. And if you're with a bunch of CEOs, they're going to start asking questions like, well, what is DOD doing? Or what are other companies doing? If you go to DOD, they're always asking, well, what is industry doing? And I kind of get mad whenever I'm talking to people, and I call them out on it, right? You know, if you're a CEO, you always imagine yourself as like Jack Welch, right? Or Mark Zuckerberg. I'm a leader. And you're not a leader if you're spending a lot of time asking, well, what is everybody else doing? That's not leading, right? That's selective following. And there's some value to that. There is. But I think a big part of it is there's very little potential upside that's visible by doing something that is brand spanking new and unique in the industry, period. So that's why we make as much of the stuff free as possible. I'm giving the keynote at DerbyCon this year, and a big part of what I'm going to talk about is like that. And actually, the entire presentation is about my mother. And one of the things my mom said before she passed away is keep giving things away for free. Keep giving things away for free. You'll never make the world a better place by charging for something. And you know what? If you think about it, there's actually some value to that statement, right? So giving it away for free gets people to start doing it and they feel more comfortable with it. So that's what we're trying to do. The other thing is, and I think the reason why we're starting to see honeypot technologies that are starting to take off, honeypots aren't new. They've been around for 10, 15 years. They're in the CISSP book. Everybody knows what they are. And it's not new, but you can make it look new. What do they call it? Lipstick on a pig type situation. You can make it look new with a cool GUI. It's going to catch on. This is going to happen. And I'm really, really, really excited. You know, we've written a book about it. We've released ADHD, and we're going to be at ground zero one way or the other. And I honestly don't care at all if we could become millionaires on it. It doesn't matter, but I want to see this start to happen because I want to see attackers start to be afraid to attack networks. Whenever I read, did anybody read William Gibson's Count Zero and like his series Mona Lisa Overdrive? In his books, what is it, Necromancer or Neuromancer? Neuromancer. That entire series. In that series, there's a concept of black ice. If you're someone that's trying to hack into a network, there are defenses that are so strong that hackers are terrified of them, and if they screw up trying to break in, they die. And I'm not saying that I want to kill attackers. That's not what I mean. But I like the idea of hackers really being terrified of actually going after some networks. And we can start moving in that direction. But we're not going to do it with the technology base that we have now. Yeah.
Is there,
oh, sorry.
well, just to hook onto that, is there a chance that you would make them upset and more angry?
I don't care. I honestly don't care. You know, there's one of those things where I honestly believe, and I'm not picking on the person that asked this question. We get this question a lot, and it's a valid question. But honestly, if we stop doing security and we stop implementing security because we're afraid that we're going to make the bully mad, we've lost. We've given up. Stop doing security right now. There's no reason. Let's get him mad, and let's do the right thing. Yeah. Yes. The comment was, hackers are looking for easy targets. They're looking for targets of opportunity. And if you throw up any fight at all, or you look even remotely dangerous, they're going to give up and they're going to go someplace else. For a targeted, determined attacker that's coming at your network that is a well-funded, targeted attacker, there's absolutely no incentive a nation state has for burning your network to the ground. Well, crap. I probably shouldn't say that with Sony and some of the other attacks that we've seen. But you know what? Sony didn't get burnt to the ground because they were doing the right thing. They got burnt to the ground because that was the attacker's objective to begin with. Yes. Yes. The question was, if you have all the different parts of an organization siloed between server ops, you have security, you have all these different admins, how do you actually implement it effectively? What you have to do is get everybody on board, come up with a plan of attack, let them know that it's not illegal. And it's weird. People get excited about it. Once they know that they can finally turn the tables on the attacker, all of those people are sick and tired of getting kicked. Right now, computer security is the equivalent of wearing a brown paper bag on your head and waiting to get attacked. It's like someone hits you in the head with a baseball bat, and you're like, the IDS system works, we're being intruded. But to actually turn the tables on the attackers is something we've all been looking to do for a long time. Any other questions? All right, everybody. Let's break, let's drink some beer, and let's eat some falafel and some hummus. Thank you very much. Oh, wait.
There is one more, and it was kind of a good one to wrap up like this. So Jacob said, can we help contribute to projects like this so that we can give back? After all, you guys give so much, and it has helped me budget blue teamers like myself.
So yes, you can actually help contribute. Go to the GitHub project, ADHD Active Defense Harbinger Distribution, and just see where you can jump in. Just continue to run it, continue to help out, send ideas. That's what we're looking for. All right. Well, thanks again, everybody. It has been a long day. Let's close it out. Thanks again.
Cool. Thanks for coming, guys. Bye.